Why is it that you're the first one in and the last one out, yet your bank account hasn't moved an inch? It feels like a cruel joke. The harder you push, the further the finish line seems to move away. You're putting in 12-hour days of pure grinding effort while others seem to breeze by in just 6. They're enjoying their freedom while you're drowning in tasks, sacrificing your sanity for pennies. But here is the truth you haven't been told. If backbreaking labor was the secret to wealth, you'd be a king by now, but instead, you're just failing. The real reason you are stuck isn't a lack of effort, it's a lack of strategy, and a specific, hidden truth I'm about to reveal will save you. Before this minute ends, you will discover the merchant's secret that changes how you view success forever. But be warned, most people fail because they are unknowingly carrying stones that aren't theirs to carry, a weight so heavy it breaks even the strongest men. I will show you how to drop that weight. But first, you must hear the story of a man who almost lost everything trying to be a hero of sweat. Ever wonder why the guy busting his gut from dawn till dusk often ends up with the shortest end of the stick? It's a tough pill to swallow, but if backbreaking labor were the secret sauce to wealth, every mule would be royalty. We've been fed this grand lie that the grind is the only path to the top, but the math just doesn't add up. The hardest workers aren't always the winners. More often, they're just exhausted souls locked in a cage of their own making. You see, most folks are out there swinging a dull axe with everything they've got, wondering why the tree won't fall. They think if they just swing harder, they'll break through, but they're only wearing out their muscles and their spirits. But here is the mystery. The elites have a different truth, a merchant's truth they keep tucked away while you're busy sweating. In the real world, the king isn't the one pulling the cart. The king is the one who figured out how to get 10 carts moving without touching a single wheel. How do they do it? It's not about hours, it's about a concept called leverage that you likely aren't using because you're too busy carrying someone else's weight. But before I show you how to apply this leverage, you need to see the tragic mistake of Thomas, a man who did everything right and still lost it all. Meet Thomas, a man who believes that more always equals better. Bless his stubborn, hard-working heart. Every day at 3 a.m., long before the sun even thinks about showing up, he's already out there. He hauls a massive wooden cart loaded with common grain, dragging 10 miles of dust toward the city market. He has that old-school grit, believing that if his muscles aren't screaming, he isn't really earning his keep. His feet are a roadmap of blisters, and his back has started to take on the permanent shape of a question mark. Thomas honestly thinks his sweat is a currency, and the more he pours out, the more the universe owes him. He is the poster child for burnout, convinced that trying harder is the magic key, not realizing he is playing a rigged game where his sheer effort is actually his biggest liability. But here is what Thomas doesn't see yet. While he's using his body as the only tool in the shed, he is ignoring the most powerful asset he possesses. He scoffs at his neighbors, calling them lazy. But soon he will discover that their laziness is actually a strategy that makes them 10 times richer than he will ever be. In a moment, a shadow will fall over his humble stall, belonging to a man who has mastered a secret that makes Thomas's 20 years of labor look like a tragic mistake. And the most shocking part, this secret is hidden in plain sight, right inside the stones Thomas refuses to let go. Then there's Richard, a man who seems to have discovered a secret shortcut that everyone else is too busy to notice. While Thomas is red-faced and straining against his wooden cart, Richard glides into the market on a horse-drawn carriage. He isn't covered in dust, and he doesn't have a single blister because he let the horse do the heavy lifting. He realized long ago that being the engine of your own business is the fastest way to blow a gasket and stay broke. Instead of fighting for scraps in the red ocean of cheap grain, Richard deals in rare saffron and silks, high-value goods that make his time worth 10 times more. While others are screaming for attention, Richard spends his mornings reading trade scrolls and building relationships. To the hustle culture crowd, it looks like he's just relaxing, but he's actually doing the deepest work of all, thinking. But here's the mystery that Thomas can't solve. How can a man who works half as hard go home with 10 times the gold? Richard has mastered the art of strategic rest, a concept that keeps his mind sharp while yours is currently drowning in mental fog. Thomas watches him leave with bitter jealousy, unaware that he is literally one decision away from this same freedom. But before Thomas can learn Richard's secret, he's about to hit a wall so hard it will shatter his very foundation, and you might be heading toward that same wall right now. Life has a funny way of throwing a wrench in the gears just when you think you've got your rhythm down. Suddenly, the market shifts, a new tax, a flood of cheap competition, and Thomas's narrow margins vanish like smoke. Instead of rethinking his strategy, he doubles down on the only thing he knows: more sweat and more pain. He starts waking up at 1 a.m., trying to pull a double load, pushing his body past the breaking point. He is the classic busy fool, mistaking movement for progress while his fundamental business model is bleeding out. You can't outrun a storm by just running faster on a treadmill. Then comes the moment the universe finally says, enough, delivered with a sickening wooden crack. Under the weight of that massive double load, the cart's axle snaps like a dry twig, sending his entire life's work spilling into the mud. Thomas collapses in the filth, realizing that all that grind didn't save him. It actually built the very weight that finally crushed him. He had been trying to build a mansion with a spoon, ignoring the heavy machinery available to those who actually think. What he didn't realize, and what you might be missing, is that his body as a tool strategy was a one-way ticket to a hospital bed. But as he sits there in the rain, a familiar carriage approaches, and Thomas is about to learn the one question that can turn a broken man into a legend. However, before he hears the answer, he has to face a truth so humble it would make most men turn away in shame. Thomas sits in the mud, staring at his broken cart and the ruined grain, a lifetime of hard work washed away in a single afternoon. The pride he once had in his work ethic has vanished. He realized his best effort wasn't even close to being enough. Sometimes the universe has to break your toys before you're willing to listen to a better way. As the sun dips, Richard's carriage pulls up, but this time, Thomas doesn't feel envy. He feels a quiet, desperate hunger for the truth. He looks at Richard, seeing a man who isn't a slave to his tools. The stubborn mule act has failed, and Thomas finally asks the question he's been avoiding for 20 long years. I've given my strength to this road until my bones ache, yet it gives me only dust. Is the world simply cruel, or have I been blind to the rules of the game? It's the most powerful moment in any man's journey, the moment he stops talking and starts listening to a higher strategy. Richard doesn't look down on him. He looks at him with the glint of a teacher, ready to help Thomas trade his heavy burden for a sharp, strategic mind. But before Richard speaks, he reaches into his cloak to pull out something small, a tool that weighs nothing but changes everything. You are about to see this tool, and it will reveal exactly why you've been feeling so heavy lately, even though you've been trying so hard to be light. The secret lies in a specific kind of weight that Thomas didn't even know he was carrying, a weight I'll detail later and show you soon. Richard pulls out a small set of polished brass scales, fitting neatly in his palm. He holds them up, letting the light catch the metal, contrasting sharply with the massive, broken wreckage of Thomas's life. You've been measuring your worth by the weight you can carry on your aching back, Richard says. But the elite, the top 1%, measure their worth by the value they place on these scales. You see, Thomas, you've been selling your sweat, and unfortunately, sweat is the most common commodity on earth. When you compete on effort alone, you're just one of 1,000 men screaming for a handful of pennies. Richard, on the other hand, sells his discernment, the ability to see where the market is going before the first cart even moves. A heavy cart pulled by a dull mind is a self-made prison. A light pack and a sharp mind is a fortune. Richard leans in, and what he says next is the merchant's secret that most people are too stubborn to accept. Working hard at a low-value task is just a fancy way of being inefficient. If you want to escape the 99%, you must stop being the engine and start being the architect. But how do you actually find your saffron, those rare tasks that pay 10x more, without losing the security you have now? The answer lies in 3 specific pillars of leverage that most people ignore until it's too late. I'm about to show you these pillars, but be careful. The third one is the exact opposite of everything you've been taught about hustle. Richard leans in close, ready to reveal the 3 pillars that changed his life, and they aren't what you'd expect. First, you gotta build the carriage, Thomas. Stop trying to be the horse that pulls the load. Leverage is using tools that turn your 1-hour effort into 10 hours of output. Systems are the engines that work for you 24/7 so you don't have to trade your heartbeat for every dollar. Second, quit fighting for crumbs in the grain market and start looking for the rare saffron in your life. If everyone can do what you do, you're just a replaceable cog in a cheap machine. You want to be the surgeon with the scalpel, not the guy digging ditches with a shovel in the rain. Third, And this is the one that shocks most people. You need to realize that rest is actually when you do the heaviest lifting for your future. Richard isn't just lounging. He's studying the market to see where the wind is blowing tomorrow. Strategic rest is about planning your next 3 moves while your competition is still gasping for air. These 3 pillars, systems, mastery, and rest, are the difference between a life of labor and a life of liberty. But Thomas is facing a terrifying question. How can he afford to rest or build a carriage when he's currently penniless and broken in the mud? The answer involves a practical pivot that allows you to generate profit even while you're dismantling your old heavy life. Wait until you see how Thomas used his very last coins to buy something that weighed 100 times less than grain, but paid 100 times more. It's a move I call the Vile strategy, and it's the bridge to your new empire. Thomas didn't just fix his old cart. He decided to burn the blueprints of his former life entirely. He sold the scrap wood for pennies and used his very last coins to pivot from common grain into the world of high-quality oils. He finally saw that dragging 100 pounds of grain for pennies was a fast track to an early grave. It's a lot easier on the soul to carry one small, precious vial that pays for a whole week's worth of rest. Instead of blindly rushing into the morning sun, Thomas spent his time studying who actually had the most gold to spend. He targeted luxury bathhouses and high-end perfumers who valued quality over a cheap bargain. By finding a niche where his product was rare, he instantly multiplied the value of every hour he spent on the clock. He stopped being a mover of weight and started being a provider of solutions. But Thomas went even further. He hired ambitious young carriers to handle the actual transport of the heavy crates. He wasn't the horse pulling the load anymore. He was the captain of an efficient fleet. By delegating the grind, he freed his mind to look for the next big opportunity, the kind of opportunity you miss when your eyes are fixed on the mud. But how did he manage to trust others with his business after 20 years of doing it all himself? The answer involves a mental shift regarding self-love and saying no that most people mistake for arrogance, but it's actually the key to your empire. Fast forward just a few short months, and the transformation in Thomas's life is nothing short of legendary. He is no longer the grain carrier that everyone used to ignore or pity. Now he is known as the oil merchant. But here is the kicker. He's pulling in 40% more profit than he ever did hauling grain, yet he's working 40% less time. While the old Thomas would still be halfway to the city, the new Thomas is already closing deals and heading home to his family. It turns out that when you trade your grain for oil, the math of success finally starts working in your favor. His face isn't beet red anymore, and those deep lines of exhaustion have smoothed out into a look of quiet confidence. He's got his health back, his back is straight, and he actually has the energy to play with his kids in the evenings. That is the true power of leverage. It doesn't just give you more money, it gives you your life back from the grind. Thomas realized he was never poor because he didn't work hard enough. He was poor because he worked too hard on the wrong things. He spent years trying to brute force his way to a fortune, unaware that he was carrying stones that were crushing his potential while serving everyone's needs but his own. But even with his new wealth, Thomas realized one final haunting truth. Many of his friends were still back in the mud, refusing to let go of their carts because they were afraid of what they would be without the weight. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to identify if you are currently addicted to your own struggle. And more importantly, I will reveal the law of the sharp axe that will prevent you from ever falling back into the trap of the busy fool. Look at your own life for a second. Your pack isn't made of heavy wooden boards and dusty grain sacks. It's made of those low-value tasks you're too stubborn to hand off and the habits that suck your time dry. You're grinding out 60-hour weeks on maintenance work while your big dreams sit on the shelf gathering dust. It's time to stop pretending that being busy is the same thing as being productive or moving toward your goals. You've got to decide right here and now. Are you going to be the horse or are you going to be the merchant? The horse gets a stable and some hay, but the merchant gets the mansion, the freedom, and the legacy. If your life or career can't run for a single day without your physical sweat, you don't own a business. You're just a high-strung employee of a very demanding boss who looks exactly like you. Every hour you spend hauling grain is an hour you've essentially stolen from your true potential and your family. But how do you actually start trading your heavy grain for saffron starting this afternoon? You've seen the merchant's truth now, and there's no going back to the lie of the grind. Most people will watch this, nod their heads, and go right back to dragging their carts until their spirits break. But I have a feeling you aren't most people. In just a moment, I will show you the exact system Thomas used to identify his stones and drop them forever, and how you can access it right now. Thomas realized that his true poverty didn't come from a lack of gold, but from a lack of space in his own heart and mind. He was carrying the expectations of others, the fear of change, and the crushing weight of a tradition that told him, sweat equals worth. He was carrying stones that were never his to begin with. But you don't have to wait for your axle to snap to start your transformation. You don't have to collapse in the mud before you decide to become the architect of your own life. Many of the stories you hear here aren't just stories. They reflect the invisible weight you may be carrying every day. If you're tired of holding pain, responsibility, and guilt that were never yours, I created a definitive bridge for you. It's an ebook called The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours. This isn't just a book. It's the brass scale for the modern world. It is designed specifically for those who want to let go, set boundaries, and finally live with the lightness that Richard and the new Thomas discovered. When you get your copy today, I'm including 2 vital tools to ensure your cart never breaks again. Bonus 1. Learning to let go. This is your manual for delegation and shedding the grain of low-value tasks that drain your spirit. Bonus 2. When saying no is an act of self-love. This will teach you the merchant's discernment, how to protect your strategic rest, so you can plan your next big move while the world is still gasping for air. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Stop swinging that dull axe against a tree that won't budge. Stop being the horse and start being the merchant. Your empire is waiting, but you can't build it until you put down the stones that don't belong to you. Click the link now, and let's start lightening your load today.